All right. Hello, guys. We are doing episode 42. I know what to do, so why don't I do it? This is something I hear from all my consultations in some form. This is something I've told you before on this channel. Like, I remember exactly where I was standing. And I've always kind of said this, but there was just this moment where I was just frustrated. And I remember exactly where I was. And I was like, if I could just do what I said I was going to do when I said I was going to do it, I would have no problems. Do you relate to that? So there's actually a book written called I Know What to Do, So Why Don't I Do It? It's by Dr. Nick Hall, and he is a neuroendocrinologist. And so in this book, there's a lot of brain science, there's a lot about immunity. But what was so interesting to me is there was a lot of what you hear from me already, which is about how our thoughts create our feelings, which make us take or not take certain actions. And then we get the results that we get, right? And he is constantly talking about that. He also talks quite a bit about stress. And I've learned from reading another one of his books about beliefs, and currently reading that right now. But I learned that stress is something that he studied. And that's why this comes into the picture quite a bit. But you have to imagine, what are your thoughts and what are your thoughts creating, right? Some form of stress, some form of distress, I would say. And so he goes into that. I don't really talk about that so much here. I'll just give you a quick synopsis of that. What he's saying is exercise will really help you. We just talked in a recent episode about expanding your capacity for discomfort. What he's talking about in this book is exercise, a cardiovascular type of exercise where you can talk, but you would rather not talk, is the form of stress that you can put on yourself. Therefore, you can put that on yourself and then take that stress away from yourself and repeat that process so that when your body feels stressed because of feelings, it will recognize that and really kind of down regulate your stress. It's kind of interesting, but I don't really go into it in this episode, but I would recommend that if that's something you're interested in, read the book. I'm sure that's something we'll talk about in future. So the fact is, most of us have the information we need to take the steps to improve our circumstances by taking action. Dr. Hall calls this the knowing doing gap. And often people are waiting for motivation to take action, but motivation is not dependable. I like to say motivation is like a flaky friend. You never know when she's going to show up, how long she'll stay, and she leaves without warning. So, how do you move forward without motivation? This is my favorite part about the book. So, as I said before, it aligns very well with what I coach with my clients. Your thoughts create your feelings, and you take or don't take certain actions. Dr. Hall emphasizes the importance of beliefs. Now, what are beliefs? Beliefs are simply thoughts like you have thought enough times that you have believed them to be true. Now, some of them are what he calls hand me down beliefs. And I always like to describe like hand me down beliefs. They can come from a lot of places. They usually start in your childhood. They could, maybe your adolescent years. Or you may have taken them on as an adult where somebody has presented a belief to you and you have taken it on and said, yes, I agree. I like to use the analogy of it's like handbags or like a purse, right? Somebody has handed it to you, this belief, maybe your parents, maybe, kids on the playground, who knows? And you have decided that's absolutely true. Thank you. And put that on. And you have kind of strapped on all these beliefs over the years. And some of them are serving you and some of them are not. And so what he talks about in this book and what we will talk about a little bit later in this episode is ways you can question those beliefs and also ways you can recognize the ones that are not serving you and the ones that are serving you. Okay, actually, let's talk about that right now. This is just some examples. I just want you to look for the ones that are getting in your way. Like there's something you want, there's a problem you want to solve, there's a goal, which is a problem we're solving, right? And something's getting in your way always. And you don't really know what that is. You can't really put your finger on it. Usually it's something like the beginning of the sentence is, I can't, I'm not a person who, I don't know how, I've never been able to, I'm not good at. Those are just some examples. Like if you finish that sentence, those are probably some beliefs that you have about yourself that are not serving you that we need to start questioning. I've been really wanting to deep dive into our beliefs about ourselves. And with that, I would call that our identity. And what I'm doing is working on a process where I'm changing and questioning my identity in a way that serves me. Now, do you need to become a whole different person in order to grow? Absolutely not. But are there certain areas or ways that you're identifying yourself that are getting in the way of your goals, your problems that you want to solve? There is. And so that will be a future episode. But what's interesting is as I've been kind of contemplating this work, doing some research on this work, trying on some things, I watched a show on Netflix called The Hitman. And I have to say, my husband and I were watching this, and the first part of the show is really, really slow. We're kind of looking at each other going, did we make a mistake? Do we need to shut this off? Because it's just, I think it's slow on purpose. It kind of goes along with the storyline, and it's kind of a goofy movie. The main character of the show is like a goofy professor, and he is a bird watcher, which I love watching birds, but I don't like specifically nothing against people that do, but in his particular way, it kind of came across as like his nerdy personality, which nothing wrong with nerdy personalities, right? But he was kind of all encompassing this nerdy personality. And he was a cat dad, which I also love cat. Maybe I'm just as nerdy as he was. I don't know. But he was coming across nerdy, and like his students weren't really relating to him. His coworkers kind of thought he was like kind of goofy. And but what he does is they give him a job replacing this person as a fake hitman, basically. And he really got into it. I can't remember what he did as a professor, but I think it was something along psychology. And so he really got into developing these characters for these people that were hiring hitmen. And the what he would do is like basically develop the perfect hitman for that person. And he developed this one that just really resonated with everybody. They thought he was cool. They were just like really interested in him and attracted to him. But basically, what he did is he changed his identity to become more of that person. And so that's something we're going to talk about in a future episode. But it was also changing his beliefs about himself. And that's where that ties into this particular conversation. So let's talk about self-discipline. That's part of that knowing what to do, but not doing it, right? So as adults with ADHD, we don't like anyone telling us what to do. And that includes us. We don't even like us telling us what to do. And there can always be that kind of a rebel attitude, that pushback, that you can't tell me what to do, that I'm sure often, I know as a child, I was definitely feeling that way. I would get so frustrated when I was going to do something and then somebody told me to do it, and now I no longer want to do it. And I think that for a lot of us can continue into adulthood. So you want to really kind of pay attention to that. Like, how are you getting in your own way with not wanting to basically go along with what you know is right? And later in the episode, we're going to ask some really simple, good questions that take all of that away. So that's coming. But pay attention to what you're thinking and feeling. And many of those thoughts, what you'll do is be negotiating with yourself. And so those negotiating thoughts look like, I'm too tired. I'll do it tomorrow. It doesn't matter anyway. There's no point. Those are just some of the negotiation thoughts. A lot of my clients, what they will express is frustration that they will want to do something and negotiate with themselves. And so there's that piece of, so why don't I do it? There's another reason, right? And I'm sure you can come up with many more of these thoughts. And how do these thoughts make you feel? I guarantee you pretty bad. Go ahead and finish that sentence and notice how you feel. You probably feel defeated. You probably feel frustrated. You probably feel apathetic. These thoughts basically deflate your balloon of motivation if you're trying to create that for yourself. These thoughts suck your energy, right? And I don't think people realize how much our thoughts deplete our energy. This is not me speaking from a soapbox. This is me speaking from experience. I remember years and years of thinking that I had some sort of fatigue disease, some sort of disease that was causing fatigue, I guess. I remember going to my doctor, and I'm sure he thought I was crazy, but I went to my doctor with this whole page of like basically symptoms that I was having. And he kind of, pretended to read it, looked it over, and didn't really, nothing really came of it. He ran some tests, things like that. Um, and of course, there was like this whole way of eating that was not helping my energy. There are oftentimes real things that are taking away from our energy, and you definitely want to acknowledge that and address that. But I will tell you, along with that, if you are severely fatigued, and this is not talking about serious diseases, right? This is talking about like most of us in the world. A lot of that fatigue is coming from your brain. A lot of that fatigue is from feeling like it's all too much, feeling overwhelmed, right? Feeling like it's all too hard, feeling like you can't do it, feeling like everybody else is doing it better. And there's all this series of thoughts that come along with that that just basically drain our energy. I mean, I would recommend that you do an exercise where you take all your worst thoughts and write them down and read them and notice how you feel. And then take other thoughts that are true but more positive, countering those thoughts, because I will tell you there is always a counter. There's always a 50-50. And what you can ask yourself there is like, what else is true here? So back to my example of like it all being too hard. It's too hard to keep up my house was one of my thoughts. What else is true here? I can easily keep this one space clean. I can't think of an example at the moment, but, and how am I going to feel differently with this one and this one, right? So notice how your thoughts are affecting your energy. If you don't have the energy, you're not going to take the action, right? So this goes perfectly into the next part. Your feelings are stopping you or they're fueling you. Again, your feelings are stopping you or they're fueling you. And later in the episode, I'm going to teach you how to ask yourself questions and answer those questions so that you are creating fuel rather than taking fuel from your tank. Okay, I was watching Ali Abdul. I'm sure most of you are familiar with him if you're interested in like productivity or anything like that. And he had on a guest, his name was Dickie Bush. And I had to actually look him up. I don't know a whole lot about him, but apparently he's a writer and he teaches a lot about writing. And he just had some really fantastic questions that I ask myself, but the way he put it, it was so simple that I had to share it with you guys. Now, I'm going to have all of these questions and these exercises coming up in a workbook, and you can get that at www.learntothrivewithadhd.com/free resources. So look for something similar to the title of I Know What to Do, so why don't I do it? And the questions are, what is the problem? What is the solution? Why am I not doing that? And I just really loved these questions. And when he asks himself the question, why am I not doing that? He'll answer it. And then he will like go deeper and go deeper until he gets to like the real root of why he's not doing that. And I'll give you an example with a goal that I had on weight loss, right? I would, set up my 12-week year. And because that's the way I was doing my goals. We have a 12-week year challenge going on, by the way. If you look in the show notes, you'll find information about that. But I would set that up for weight loss and I would quit. And that's actually why I created the challenge for you guys to come along with me, is because it keeps me motivated. It keeps me going. But I would very easily quit. As soon as I would get an obstacle, I would quit. And if I was to ask myself, what is the problem? What is the solution? Why am I not doing that? So what is the problem? waking, right? What is the solution? Following the tasks that I have set up on this 12-week year, just following the daily tasks. And why am I not doing that? I'll spare you going deeper and deeper and deeper. But once I went all the way deeper, it was back to that, belief about myself. And what that was I didn't believe I could do it. So there was some form of I can't do it, right? And that I can't do it kind of went to that thought of like, what's the point anyway? And you see how this all kind of ties together. And so that's what would stop me. As soon as I would go back to that belief of like, I can't do it, there's no point. And I give my clients the example of like, it's like you're driving along and you kind of like go off to the side of the road, like maybe you go over the yellow line, right? And then you just say, forget it, what's the point? And you take your hands off the steering wheel. That's crazy, right? We don't do that. What do? We just self-correct. And that's where we want to be. That's the healthy place to be. But what I was doing was just taking my hands off the wheel and letting the car eventually crash, right? The car being my goal. So with all of these questions that I'm offering you, these simple tools of asking yourself a question and answering the question, what needs to happen is you need to answer these things honestly. Not what you think other people want to hear, not what you think is the nice thing to say. Like, be absolutely honest with yourself. If I always tell my clients, if you need to shred it or burn it afterwards, go ahead, but at least be honest with yourself on paper, right? Another rule is you don't get to say, I don't know. I don't know stops any forward motion because now you are not in control. It's in somebody else's control. You don't know who, but you just know it's not you because you don't know, right? So a question you can ask yourself there is, what if I did know? You would not believe how that opens up ideas and creativity that you would be unwilling to go to if you just stopped at, I don't know. So I like to say it's a rule for my clients. It's a rule in my life. I don't know is not an option. And I kind of joke with my kids when I ask them a question and they say, I don't know. I'm like, well, then who does? And oftentimes it's something that only they could know the answer to. Like, do they want such and such? Only they know, right? I would offer you the same thing. Like, then who does? Who knows? And that might be a legitimate question. It might be, I want to accomplish this thing, but I don't know how. Well, then who does? And that's your next action, right? Seek out the person that knows. Seek out the course you need to take. Seek out the mentor you need to find. Seek out the coach you need to get. Who knows who has the information for you? But you don't get to stop at I don't know, and that's it. Therefore, I'm stuck, right? You see how that's super disempowering. Now, goals. That's what's the problem, right? What's the problem shows you the goal that you need to have because as I keep harping, like what are goals but problems to be solved? I really liked Dr. Hall's perspective on goals. And I think it's very ADHD friendly. Now, remember, like I said, goals are simply problems to be solved, but he makes the point that you start at the end, start at the solution, start at what you want, and work your way backwards. But what he really emphasizes is enjoying the process. So once you've worked your way backwards, we're no longer looking at the finish line. We're terrible at that as adults with ADHD, looking at the finish line. The neurotypical people, what makes them different is they see the end reward, even if it's far away, and they kind of keep their eye on that while they're taking action. We have a really hard time keeping our eye on the end goal if we can do it at all. Like that's what that's what I like about the 12-week year as far as like writing the vision is it kind of helps you keep a pulse on the end goal in that way. But what Dr. Hall emphasizes is enjoying the process along the way. And I'll give you an example of that. So right after our first round of 12-week year, I started a challenge at our gym, which is an 8-week body transformation. And we do these once or twice a year. And they're just really fun for our clients. They're really motivating. And I decided this time I was going to join. I came off this 12-week year where, that was my goal. And what I really got from this 12-week year that from focusing for 12 weeks on this goal, I honed exactly what I need to do in order to get this goal. And so now that I had honed that, there's no question, this is exactly the things I need to do. I'm going into this 8-week challenge, but instead of looking at the end of the 8 weeks and where I'll be, I am looking at today. How can I win today? And I have a habit tracker. I give you guys a habit tracker when you join the challenge. Um, I should let you know where to do that. It's in the show notes, but it's www.learntothrivewithadhd.com/12, and that's the number, week year challenge. I give you guys a habit tracker. And so I put that habit tracker right in front of my face. And I don't look at the whole week. I look at that day. What is there to do today? And that is just, keeping my focus so narrow that I'm not getting overwhelmed, but also, how am I winning today? How else, like, what else can I do to like make today better? And then what is going to happen? I'm going to stack up those days of doing well that day, and they're going to turn into something big. But I'm not worried about that right now. And so I really liked his perspective on enjoying the process. He explained it as I want to say kayak racing is what he was doing. Maybe it's like canoe, I don't remember, some sort of water sports, but it was like just miles and miles and miles. These races were, and like a huge amount. And what he would do, instead of worrying about that huge amount of distance that he needed to go, he would just worry about what he had to do that day. And he would also give himself grace, whereas he didn't really have control over the weather. He didn't have control over certain circumstances. And so he would just do the best he could that day. And so that's kind of part of that enjoying the process. So what does that have to do with I know what to do, so why am I not doing it? I'm kind of phrasing it differently now, right? But what does that have to do with it? It all has to do with some sort of goal. Even if you're not a goal setter, even if you don't believe in setting goals, you have problems to be solved. And you want to do something towards that problem, but you're not doing it. You see how this all relates? So this is probably the perfect segue to fear. And I really learned something with the way he talks about fear, that I thought was so interesting. I actually had to pause the book and go, okay, is that true? And what he talked about in the book was that fear is always in the future. Fear is always the fear of what has not happened yet. And like I said, I paused and I'm like, hmm. And he gave the example of like standing on the edge of a high building, right? And you have a fear of heights, and somebody startles you from behind, and you lose your footing and you fall. Well, you're no longer afraid of heights. Now you're afraid of hitting the ground. And it was kind of a silly, exactly. It was a funny way he presented it, even though it's a terrible thing, right? But it was a funny way he presented it. But I was like, okay, wait a minute. Is it always the fear of the future? And so I thought of like, okay, what are people afraid of? Like I would be afraid if like a tiger were in front of me and angry, right? I would be afraid of, there's certain things. I'm not so afraid of snakes. I think they're kind of cool. I definitely don't want to deal with a venomous snake, but I would like to look at it from a distance. But I know a lot of people are terrified of snakes. And I thought about that and I'm like, what are they afraid of? Are they afraid of it because it has scales or looks a certain way or whatever? That's all ways that, our brain identifies it to watch for danger, right? But what are they afraid of? They're afraid of getting bitten. They're afraid of the snake biting them. They're afraid of the future action of the snake biting them. Now, I have, seen rattlesnakes, huge rattlesnakes out in our yard and things like that. And, kept my distance and had no fear of them. Why? Because they can't bite me. It's too far away. Nothing's going to happen. And so I wasn't afraid of that future getting bitten like these people are with snakes, right? And a lot of times it's because they're afraid of all snakes because they can't identify one from the other. And so they're just fearful, period. And then I thought about that some more and I'm like, huh, So, what about something I've been dealing a lot with clients is like the fear of putting themselves out there, right? That's what I'm doing right now. If you're listening to my voice or watching this video, I'm putting myself in front of you and I'm giving you ideas and I'm sharing my thoughts and telling my own stories and basically presenting myself to you and saying, "Do you agree? What do you think?" Like I'm putting myself out there. Now, what are these people that are afraid to put themselves out there? And not to say I have never had any fear doing this. I do. It has gotten easier over time, but what are we afraid of as humans, putting ourselves out there, giving a speech, putting ourselves out there in front of people? We're afraid of what's going to happen next. We're afraid of what the audience might do or how they might react. We're afraid on YouTube of what people might say in the comments. We're afraid on a stage performing, how the audience might same thing, how the audience might react. But we're afraid of what's going to come in the future. Maybe they're afraid they're going to mess up or make a mistake. And what they might think about themselves if that happens, what the audience might think of them. It's always in the future. And I thought that was really interesting. I had heard if you want anxiety, get a future. If you want depression, get a past. And basically, it's like if you're hanging out too much in the future, you're going to be anxious. And by hanging out in the future, what we mean is projecting your mind into the future. And by hanging out in the past and thinking about what maybe has gone wrong or your regrets or, those kind of things, that's going to make you more depressed. And so I guess I kind of knew the concept, but I'd never heard of it in this way. We are always scared of what's going to happen next. So back to, I know what to do, so why don't I do it? Are you afraid of what's going to happen next if you take action? Oftentimes we are, right? And we always talk about a fear of failure. Fear of failure is in the future. If you don't take action, you can never fail. If you take action, you're going to eventually get to that future where you could fail, right? And so your brain is just protecting you and saying, let's just not go there. Let's not take action. So this goes right into how our brain does not like uncertainty. We don't fear change, but what we fear is failing to make a change. Kind of tying back to that fear of failure, right? Now, isn't that interesting? I think we can get really confused about this and self-sabotage. We sabotage ourselves to avoid change, causing the failure to be certain. Now our brain has certainty, right? And so just watch for that too. How are you creating that certainty? Our thoughts directly affect what we get. I know I'm harping on it, but it's so true. We need to be really careful what we think and what language we use. And back to like examples of things like that are holding you back. I can't. If anything starts with I can't, and you're going to have a problem, right? Let me say that again. If anything starts with I can't, you're going to have a problem. I can't, you're not going to, right? I'm not a person who, again, finish the sentence, and that will directly relate to your results. I've never been able to, like we talked about earlier, right? So let's talk about reframing. You're like, okay, right. I noticed that these thoughts are happening. I noticed that this language is coming out of my mouth, but I don't know what to do about it. Reframing is simply expressing something differently. And when I talk about this in coaching, what I mean is you can say this in a way that benefits you. So I will always catch my clients on these kind of thoughts that are not serving them and help them to say them in a different way that is also true to them. And I'll check in, like, does that feel good to you? Does that feel accurate? And does that feel like it also could be true? And then we'll practice that one instead. Back to my personal example, I don't think I can achieve this goal can be reframed to, I know I can do my daily tasks, and that will make progress. I would even add, would make great progress, right? Another reframe that is so helpful, it was helpful to me when I was getting coached. I still get coached, but when I was kind of first getting coached and I was like learning to manage my time, really learning to do these things that were like really a stretch for me, that were very challenging, that I would like set up, I was trying to follow a calendar is what I was trying to do. And so I would set it up and I would start to follow it and I would look at it, or I would come to the time it was time to do the thing I put on the calendar and I'd rather do anything else. I'm sure many of you have experienced this. But what my coaches would remind me when I would come back to them and I'd be like, this is not working. What they would remind me is, no, you're learning to manage your time. You're becoming a person who manages their time. You're building the skill. I think that was my favorite one. You're building the skill of time management. And once they gave me that reframe, I was like, oh, okay. So when I have these days that I don't look at the calendar, or when I have these days that I don't want to do the thing on the calendar, I don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I can just realize that this is a skill I'm building. It's not going to go perfectly. I don't have to be perfect. I can expect it won't be, and that's okay. And that helped me to kind of reevaluate, recommit, and try again because I was just building this skill. I was not expected to be perfect. So there is far more to these lectures than I've expressed to you here, and it's really entertaining and interesting, and I definitely recommend that you take a look at it. And by lectures, if you get it on Audible, it is basically him giving a lecture to people, and it's kind of all compiled together with a chapter at the end where he's being interviewed. And I think the important conversation to have at this point, if you've made it this far, you're a lifelong learner like myself, right? But the trap that we don't want to fall into is never applying. So I know what to do. You have the knowledge. So why don't I do it? Why are you not taking the action on it? So here's what you've learned so far. You know your thoughts create your feelings, and then you take or don't take certain actions. You know you have beliefs, which are thoughts you've thought over and over that are getting in your way. Some of them are working for you. You know, fear is the underlying cause of why we don't take action. And you know you need to be careful in the way that you frame your thoughts and the language that you use. You know change is going to be challenging and not a perfect process. I'll offer you a tool here that I told you about earlier, where we're going to create fuel from your feelings, right? I'll speak to you just like I would one of my private clients. And I'll have this all in the workbook. Like I said, it's www.learntothrivewithadhd.com/free resources. And just look for something similar to the title of the episode. And right now you can just think about it. If you're driving, if you're working out, whatever, just think through these things I'm going to ask you. So think about something that you're not doing, but you want to be doing. We're going to come at this 3 different ways. And so these, although I have them numbered here 1 through 3, they're interchangeable. You could really start anywhere. So, but starting with number 1, how would I need to feel in order to take action here? It may be something like capable, excited, optimistic, courageous, or I'd even offer just willing. What would I need to be thinking? This is number 2. What would I need to be thinking in order to feel that way? What thoughts can you choose to have that you believe to be true that create this feeling that you want to have? And number 3, what actions could I take, no matter how small, towards this thing? Often just taking some sort of action helps us to think differently about the problem. Or maybe taking some sort of action, now we feel capable or optimistic about this project. When we were doing nothing, it kind of seemed insurmountable, right? Like I said, you can begin with any question that resonates with you. You cannot do this wrong. So we talked about lots of things we could do to solve this problem in this episode, right? And I'll be giving you the tools in future episodes to do that. But right now, I just want to stick with this one where we're creating fuel from our feelings and our thoughts in order to take the action. I think that's the most important central one. And then we will kind of dive into these in separate episodes in the future. I think these other ones are important, but back to just review those 3 questions as well. What is the problem? What's the solution? Why am I not doing that? I love the simplicity of that. What's the problem? What's the solution? Why am I not doing that? So, what I don't want you to do with this is ask these questions and then just keep the question in your head. You have to answer the question. Otherwise, you're staying stuck, confused, right? And that won't move you forward. I think this was such an important topic today. It's a great book, series of lectures, however you want to put it. If this isn't your first podcast, you can see how this information directly aligns to how I coach and the information that I give you guys. So, in learning a new way to manage my time, I have changed the way I'm working with clients. I open up coaching once a month if there is a seat available, basically space in my calendar to work with a new client. And I have a place where you can go. And in future, I'm going to have group coaching. That is my next 12-week year. That is my goal, is to figure out a new system of group coaching. And I'm really excited about it. I feel like the ADHD Academy, it might still be called the ADHD Academy. I'm sure it will be actually. But I feel like the membership that I opened up, I heard another person on YouTube explain it like you have a playground, which is like all the courses, right? You have a playground and you just kind of like shoved the kid into the playground and you're like, go play. And I kind of felt like that's how I'd set up the membership, where people were kind of alone in figuring out what to do, where to start, what to do next, and just not being like held by the hand the way I wanted them to be. So the where you go though is www.learntothrivewithadhd.com/get coached. And what you can do there is join the waitlist, and you will be notified of one-on-one coaching or group coaching that's coming. But I have some really exciting ideas that I just want to, if you want to listen, if not, go ahead and end the video. But I have some fun ideas, and what I'm going to do so far with what I've come up with is not do a subscription system. So what does that mean? No ADHD tax. Isn't that exciting? And in not doing a subscription system, what I think I'm going to do is do a 3-month option where you are basically joining me for a quarter. I'm kind of going with the whole academic theme, right? The ADHD Academy. Join us for a quarter. Here is what we're working on for this quarter. These are the subjects that we will cover this quarter. Are you in? Great. Join us. Would you? And then basically next quarter, here's the next subjects that we're going to cover. Are you in? Yes or no? You get to raise your hand for that. Or you can sign up for the whole year, right? And I'm kind of toying with some fun things about, being a freshman, a sophomore, a junior, a senior, that kind of thing. That's very American for those of you overseas watching me, but I'm sure you'll get the idea. And what I really want to do with this, and I'm figuring out if this needs to be on a platform, how this needs to happen, but I want to be there with you. I don't want to send you off to this place where I'm like, go learn. I taught this information. What I want to do is be teaching you directly. I want to be there for you to answer your questions, to explain things a little more clearly for you, to anything that's confusing, right? But I want to be right there live, and then open it up for any coaching, or maybe coaching will come along with the questions. But I want to be there. And I think what I was trying to do there was remove myself, and it just didn't align with my values. And so it felt off and wrong, and I didn't like it. Now, if you can't attend live, there will be replays. But what I want to have happen is there be some sort of way for you to interact easily. And that's where I'm kind of moving away from it all being locked behind a platform where it's kind of sterile, and there's not like the hand holding that I want to have. So I'm figuring that out. We're redesigning the website here pretty soon, and I'd like to maybe kind of figure it out with that. So information to come on that. That's going to be my 12-week year. I think this week, before the 20th, when we start our new 12-week year, that's June 20th. You can join us at any time, though. You'll just get the replays to basically catch up, and you'll be at whatever week you're at when I'm at whatever week I'm at, basically. But I'm going to be figuring this out, and hopefully at the end of the 12 weeks, it will be open. So I'm super excited about that. But again, if you want to like get on the list for that, it's www.learntothrivewithadhd.com/get coached. If you're already getting emails from me, you'll already get that information. All right. So I want to thank you guys today for your time and especially your attention. And I will see you guys next week. Thanks.